Welcome, everyone, and thank you for your understanding about the last-minute changes and for your support for Freeport's speech. As late as yesterday afternoon, Dr. Ann McKee intended to be here tonight, even though she has been ill since last Sunday with a severe bronchitis. Early this morning, her fever returned, and she had to reluctantly make the decision to postpone. Little did I know that when former Freeport speech speaker Clayton Spencer wanted to introduce me to her friends, Dr. Julia Byers and Steve Holtzman, that they would become dear friends. As it turned out, we happened to each have winter homes in San Miguel de Allende, where we met. Julia and Steve drove to Maine yesterday to be our guests to hear Dr. Ann McKee. At 7:30 this morning, when I heard about the Ann's postponement, I asked Julia to step in at the last minute. I guess there might be a warning to all of you about becoming a house guest at the Salimo. And Julia and Steve, I sincerely thank you. Just like Dr. McKee, Dr. Julia Byers' work is incredibly important. She is widely acknowledged for essentially creating the idea and the practice of humanitarian expressive therapy, deploying expressive therapy with populations that have been deeply damaged and traumatized by not only natural but also man-made disasters. Now, being the most familiar with Julia's work, I've asked her husband and partner, Steve Holtzman, to facilitate the Q&A portion of tonight's discussion. Steve is the former executive vice president of Biogen and a Rhodes Scholar. Steve always introduces Julia as his better 7/8. By the way, tomorrow, May 31st, is their 10th wedding anniversary. And coincidentally, Rita and my 49th wedding anniversary. I don't think any of the four of us is going to forget the day before our anniversary anymore. Dr. Byers' work has taken her to Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, but tonight's talk is about a humanitarian undertaking. It is not about politics. So please listen to what she has to say, think about it, and then talk to each other in a civilized manner. With great pleasure, Dr. Julia Byers. The best part of the night. For me.
Well, you know, of course, I'm in love with Tom. Sorry, that's the way it goes. But I think you all are here. So I think another round of applause for Tom's creativity in having this second. So just so I get to know you a little bit more, so I know who I'm talking to, so could you please tell me how many of you are associated with the arts in any way, shape, or form? Pretty good, I would say. That's great. And what about the CEOs and the educators and the businessmen and the accountants and everyone else in the room? So you know, it's a funny way to begin. Tom took my joke because I was going to say, oh my goodness, this is how you spend your anniversary the night before. So again, I'm full of heart, and when I get nervous, my voice gets higher, my words get fumbled, etc., etc. So you have to forgive me for that along the way, especially when we didn't have much of a time to think about this. So soon as Tom told me this morning, I thought one of the most important things to share would be the most recent work I've done in Lebanon. So today is about sharing some of that work, and I hope it has meaning for you, and there will be the opportunity to talk about it a little bit afterwards. If you do not have enough response to your questions, I'm very happy to follow up in an email or something like that. Now I have to tell you, it's quite a thing to be in front of a former college president and a former CEOs and quite a community here which is there. When we talk about the arts, it's always a little fringy to some extent. So I would like to change perhaps some of your ideas about the fringy part and kind of make it more real. We're in this beautiful building. Look at the stained glasses around. And someone has done the architecture here that gives reverence and a sense of sacredness to who we are and what we are. So in the spirit of that, people ask me, well, what is expressive arts therapy? So I would like to begin with you sharing and talking about how the arts have had meaning for you in your life, your mothers, your grandmothers, your neighbors, or whatever. How has art, with a capital A, been in your life? So would you kindly just speak to the person next to you, just for a few minutes, say hello if you don't know them, you know, we are in church, and just have a little conversation. must be stories going on in the room. So whatever story you weren't able to finish, please finish it at the end. Because it's kind of nice to have to share it along the way. This is free speech, after all. So follow it up, please. So is anybody brave enough just to share a little bit of why this art, this fluffy stuff, makes a difference? Why does it make a difference? Oh, come on, you're bubbly folks. Yes, yes.
It touches the heart and soul.
Oh, that sort of thing makes my heart smile inside out. So thank you for that. Yes, indeed. It's the human spirit, isn't it, that really touches our experiences that elevate us to another place. When life is horrible, there's despair, there's isolation, there's frustrations, there's chaoticness, and God knows there's chaos in the world right now. We have a sense that we have choice. We can actually choose what we do in the arts. And this is, as you'll see, a very important part of humanitarian efforts, to have choice. Choice of supplies, choice of circumstances, choice of resources, of people around you. Choice is a huge factor. So your choice to honor the heart first, that's in my belly bag as well, so thank you. What else? Yes, yes, please. It's hard to see up here, you know.
There's so much we could say about it, but I think in relation to the international part, it's universal. It's something that anyone, no matter what language or background, they can listen to a piece of music and react to it. They can see a piece of art and all have a reaction to it. And they can all, everyone can express that.
Well, we had Sheena before, and just hearing the violin, which is a voice, but she brought her students with her. And I was like, tears in my eyes, when she brought the students, you know, and they're starting a whole new world. The music in and of itself touches very deeply and profoundly. And it starts on another communication level about what metaphors are all about, what are symbols all about. Because sometimes it's really hard to speak about the truth, but you can sing it, you can draw it, you can dance with it, you can do all sorts of things. It gives you permission in another language. So thank you again for that. And Wanda's a true believer anyhow. Here we are, friends in San Miguel, so thank you. Anyone else? Yeah?
Right there, to the front.
Oh, yes, please.
We're going to bring a microphone up.
Okay.
Just to spark the imagination
Yes.
in a way that science might not.
Yes. No, that's brilliant, because that's the core of our imagination. Can be horrible about things, but it can be very, very positive and take us away from the immediate trauma or the immediate association that's going on. With imagination, if we can't imagine, where would we be as a society, as a people, as a human being? So, yes, yes, yes. Another thing I'd like to add is the arts can provide a sense of safety. And you think, well, what's the safety piece all about? But truly, if I can't control anything else that's going on in my interpersonal life, I can control what I'm putting down and what I'm connecting and what I'm doing. There was a little boy who was in the Philippines when I was there during the mudslides. 2,000 children were killed in 8 minutes, which is a horrible thing just to envision. And I was doing humanitarian relief, bringing together 400 people and all their families. And we had to first train local people in kind of how to speak and what to say to some of the children. And then they would go into these groups of 20. Can you imagine that many people in one place, all kind of want to make sense of what's happening? And this little boy started piling. He took tissue paper, he sort of piled it up, and he kept piling it, and piling it, and And he put tape down, put tape down, and tape down, and tape down. He took a glue bottle. He poured the glue bottle over every inch of that place. And then he poured the paint on top. And soon he had this mound. And he kind of going, oh my God, all the supplies. Anyhow, here he is with the mound. And he turned to the group. And it was a volcano. And he says, I don't know what to do with how I feel right now. Because there was so much going on as that volcano has killed my family, my friends, and everything else. So it was an opener. It was an absolute opener, and he bound his anxiety with what he was doing and how he was doing it. Take a little girl in Uganda, and the Lord's Resistance Army came through. The Lord's Resistance Army did the most horrible things of cutting off limbs and making children kill their parents by cutting off limbs and all sorts of things. 2,000 children were displaced and orphaned in that area. What do? Well, a lot of them end up getting AIDS because some of the soldiers rape them, defame them, and everything else that goes on together. So one little particular girl was orphaned by her parents, and she was in the group with the school, and all the other children were keeping away from her. She had AIDS, sort of, she didn't die anyhow, so what would happen? So put the children into groups and they started telling stories. And she started telling the story about a little bird that had broken wings. And she started illustrating what the broken wings were and how they probably never would be fixed. Suddenly you had an older 15-year-old, this girl was about 9, 10 years old, who came over and she put her arm around the little girl and said, I like birds too. So it was just the sweetest, simplest thing, but it brought all the other children around to her, and they started embracing her image and started building more feathers, and put more feathers on, and more feathers, and more feathers on. So that was a sense of community that you gained just from that little bit. When you're doing international work, it's not therapy per se, because you don't have the longevity. I'm coming in as a white person, speaking the language I do, if it's ever clear, who knows. But I come with my heart, and they know I'm there for a purpose, even if I'm not Arabic or Syrian or Jewish, or I come in leading first by my human experience. I'm privileged enough to have, we are privileged enough to have 4 beautiful children who now have 4 grandkids. So having that legacy was very important in my life. So it's a very easy thing to relate to. Immediately, the suffering of mothers, of parents, of people that are, how could you even imagine your children maimed or hurt or killed in any particular way? So I come, not with the credentials of academia, I come with the credentials of the heart. You mentioned the soul, the humanity, the imagination sort of comes with it, the choice to do what you want to do with it. I come caring for the person, not the geopolitical dimensions of what's ever happening, but of the particular family, of the particular person. So what I'm sharing today is going to Lebanon, which was Palestinian, Lebanese, and Syrian children who were burned victims because of the conflicts that are going on in there. So can you imagine Syrian camps that are all in tents, and the children have 80% or more burns over their bodies, and no means to really put it together. In Ara is this amazing group of very inspired women, the woman herself who founded it is Arwa Damon. She was a CNN reporter for the Middle East for 18 years, and she saw what was happening, and she wanted to be active in the world instead of passive looking at it. She really wanted to sort of be alive in the community. So I was, again, privileged enough to be able to go there and to work up a plan, not for the physical immediate disabilities of the children, but for the mental associations that came with it. The programming was a beautiful program, medical relief. They had doctors to come in and set up MASH units, help put the children together as best they can. And then for months, in fact years, they would have over and over again medical procedures, because you can't do it over like this when you're a burn victim. So what are they going to do in the meantime? So I came over, I was there with a week, and we did a pilot project, 2 groups of children that were bussed in from all the different refugee camps, and started working on how to empower these children again. These are children that will be defaced for the rest of their lives. You always look a little different. Maybe they don't have limbs anymore because they're cut off. Maybe they are just, children become so insular because they're scared of the world now. They're scared of what the world did and how they will be in the world. So I'd like to show you the first video that Ara tells you about the organization. And then I might chat a little bit more. And then I'd like to show you a little bit of what I did over there. There are some caveats. When you see, especially me, working with children, my voice is high, I'm very friendly, I'm very present for the children. You wouldn't know it's therapeutic in the least. You wouldn't know what was going on behind the scenes in the training of the people that are there, just as much as what goes on in my head when I'm with the children. It sort of looks like arts and crafts. It just sort of looks like a fun thing. But with humanitarian art therapy is so much more in the psychological development of empowering the children to look at their lives in a different way. So shall we just start with the first one so you get a context for where I am and what I'm doing, and maybe chat a little bit more, and then move into the second one. I have another confession, is that it always makes me teary every time I see this. So I get a little choked up, so just warning ahead of time if anybody else has those same kind of reactions to things in the world. So can we cue in, please?
There are images that are just completely seared into my mind. Still photographs almost, mostly of children's faces and of the way that the trauma of everything that they've been through just plays out on them. Most of the time when you come across these children in the war zones, they've just fled the violence. They've just been pulled out from underneath the rubble. They're shocked, they're traumatized.
Her name's Mariam, she's 10, and there with her older sister Inam. They say a mortar hit their house just as they were trying to make a run for it.
مين راح حبيبتي؟ مين راح؟ أمي وأبويا وأختي وأخوي.
One of the biggest challenges that we face when reporting on war zones or reporting on refugee crises is taking the intense emotions and experiences that people have gone through and somehow trying to condense that into a news report. And for myself and for a lot of my colleagues, we're often left with this question of, did we do enough? The children on the refugee route, their parents have taken such risk to try to get them to what they believe is going to be this better life. They're exhausted. They've spent days and weeks on the road, sleeping out in the open, not knowing how they're going to be getting from one area to another. But at the same time, having actually left the physical war zone behind, you do begin to see little pieces of optimism. Of course, what they don't yet know is just how difficult all of that is going to be.
البنت هاي كانت بسوريا ملكة، هلا اطلع هذا مو منظر بنت، هذا منظر مشردين.
It is heartbreaking to witness such despair, but I've also witnessed the power of kindness, of what it means to receive assistance, be it humanitarian, medical, or other forms of support. And whether it's coming from individuals or from charities that are operating around the world, the power of what's being provided, it's profound. Alleviating hunger, providing shelter, restoring dignity. And then there's what I see through my own charity, Inara, the impact of medical treatment.
حاسه انه في شيء انه مو مزبوط بوجهك، والله حاسه بوجهك انه مو مزبوط.
بس من وراء العمليات حاسستين متحسنه؟
ايه نفسيتها ايه الحمد لله، وحتى صحتها متغيره. هلا بعطيها حليب نوعين، حليب بتشار وحليب ميل.
And what you begin to see, which is just so inspiring in so many ways, is this child's story, this child's psyche that was once so defined by violence and cruelty and evil begin to shift. And when you see that shift, you realize the profound impact that we can have on one another when we do actually reach out and help each other.
Their mother is in tears as she's talking about everything that they went through, but also about what the impact was of seeing her son being treated, seeing people actually stand with them and support them, and how it's given them, the entire family, actually hope again.
The most painful thing with seeing children in war zones and on the refugee route, whether it's through my work at CNN or through my charity, Inara, is realizing that that spark inside a child's eye, that innocence, that joy, it's completely deadened. But it's not gone. It's something that can be restored. But it can only be restored when we actually come together. And if we do want to create better opportunities, if we want to be better, then we have to do better by those who need us the most.
Oh, شكرا. Oh.
So you can take a breath if you want. Think of your nieces. Think of your nephews. Think of your daughters. Think of your sons. Think about your own life and everything you know and everything you plan for. Whoosh goes away. We're so safe in this world here, right now, with friendship, fellowship, and people around that we can trust and we know. And what if it's all taken away? And what if it's all taken away for that child for the rest of their lives because they look different now? They're not impacted. So, this sounds light, the next little film, and some of the speakers in it again saw it as light behavior or just activities, sort of like the arts and crafts types activities. But I'm very happy to talk more about what's behind the scenes and how perhaps it starts to bring a different perspective to that child's life. One of the children that you will see was what you call it, ISIS. And he was pulled away from his family. He was forced to be in their army. He's 9 years old. And his mother went berserk. And I don't know how she did it, but somehow she was able to get back to the unit, pull out her son, and then live in this one-room place. And this little boy had been there for probably a year and a half. No psychological intervention. She kept him isolated, no education, no friendships, whatever. So this is the first time he comes out. He sees other children, he sees other adults reaching out to him, and you can see them playing even on the basketball field. And my dear husband says, why on earth would you put them on the basketball field? It's supposed to be arts. And of course, these young men couldn't stay still. They couldn't stay focused with what the activities were. So getting them out on the basketball net and having a relationship with some of the workers kind of calmed them down a bit, and then they were able to really, really focus in on the art, which was very, very important. The products of what happened at the end actually went home with them, which is something you don't usually do in a therapeutic context. But something came home, you'll see, and look for it on the bus, which was a transformation of what they did with their stories. So, shall we look at that one? And please excuse the lightness of me. It's sort of contextual all the way through. Thank you.
This is so exciting!
Hello! My name is Julia, and as you will notice, I'm a little bit silly. And I have with me my friends from America, Lisa and Michelle. We are going to make some art together and get to know each other. We will be putting on a puppet show.
So this one is a free draw or just get used to materials. So normally most children would just explore space and colors and line or whatever, but they are so thirsty and they're so happy to be drawing. So it's like, go with the flow.
Art for children who have been traumatized is especially important. So these children who are here at Anara, they have so much trauma that they're holding. And art is a safe way to express this trauma. It's a safe way to show what's happening without them having to relive the trauma. And they can change the art. They could make new things so they have more control over an uncontrollable situation.
Can you tell us about this one?
He watches a lot of videos of racing cars in Tokyo City, and he would love to visit it one day.
They can use their imagination to imagine hope and imagine more of what's happening.
It's a rabbit. She's telling her that it's a rabbit.
That's the therapist? No.
Rabbit.
Oh, it's the rabbit. Yeah. Oh, I love the bunny ghost. Right? Yeah. And she makes food for the rabbit.
She made.
Yeah, she made food for the rabbit.
Why did I decide to come and work with the Inara's children? They are not to blame. They were injured in a war made by adults. And somehow the right thing seems to be to find a way to help them heal and grow into full adults as well.
I am absolutely loving all of this. I can't even begin to say just how important it is for our children because they never have access to things like this. It's just working towards enhancing kind of our whole holistic treatment approach.
And now we're going to make your animals and the enemy animals all live together. So each group is going to help each other to make the one picture.
Can
Can you tell me more?
الأسد، الكلب، وهيدا الأكل طبعا.
This is so important for children because children learn through play. Children and art is part of play. They learn through the play.
When they first came, many were shy, reluctant to interact, to have a conversation with others. They were shy. But through the group activities, the circle activities, the creative activities, I see them coming out just in a few days of that opportunity to be with other kids, to express themselves, to be able to move and play games like basketball.
They process through the play. Adults talk, but children play. And so the trauma that they've had and the issues that they've had come out through the play and through the art. And creating the program the way that we did helps contain so that they're not re-traumatized and that they can use the art to process what's going on for them and grow and learn through the process. And
what we're going to make are pillow puppets.
So it doesn't have to be a bird.
She was saying that I'm drowning and I'm chained in my cage. And we'll have to glue them on.
Yes.
So she's doing half of a butterfly because everyone else is doing butterflies, so she wanted to be a little bit different.
Right?
Yeah.
You want me to
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
There,
Because
put
then
my-
you
put
keep
my little
it. That's okay then. Maybe we won't even bother with.
They can't communicate with the other, but man, they're in it. I love it.
لقينا في بوابة سحرية فتنا عملنا لقينا في كوخ وغابة.
My experience of this week has been so joyous to see the children come in and be so shy and be so quiet and, you know, struggling to connect with each other, and just see them make friends and connect and have fun and laugh. Some of them were sad and they were almost surprised when they were laughing. I was, my heart was just bursting open with joy to see how happy they were and how much they had grown.
So, what have I forgot to say that you need to hear? Stephen H. Holtzman, would you come up and help with questions and answers? This is how we celebrate our anniversary.
So, this working right? I'll kick off the Q&A session with just a couple of questions, and then we'll turn on the house lights and go to the audience, okay? So first, excuse me. Hey. You remain extraordinary. Talk a little bit, if you would, about what you were thinking about when you structured the project, right? So you made a decision having to do with they're going to represent, they're gonna start with animals, right? Choose the animal who you are. Choose an animal who's your friend. Choose an animal who's your enemy, all right? And then you're going to start making things happen with that. And then further, the second question, the decision you made that you would then have them embody their animals, right, in the form of pillow puppets. So pillows, right? We have more pillow puppets than you can imagine at home that she made. At first, the inspiration is funny when you got the idea for that, right? And then the notion of a play, and then takes in something home, the choice of material. What was all this stuff that if you hadn't told me, I had no idea why you were doing what you were doing. Okay? So starting with the animals now.
All right, well, I'll start with the animals. Do you think there's animals in here? Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to take
Ready?
care of that?
Oh, please, don't have this hard with the light.
I know what she wants to do. I'll take half of them and start on the other side of the room. Reach your hand in and take out one.
So we start small. And we start small because it's something you can control in the palm of your hand. It's something that brings up the imagination. It's something that makes you feel alive, connects you to your childhood, yourself as well as another child. And it's something that can begin discussions about stories. Real stories or metaphoric stories. As you get to know anyone, you will feel those stories. And what you develop is a sense of empathy with each other back and forth. So believe it or not, I was in Hawaii. And when I was in Hawaii, they have one of those labyrinths. Do you know the labyrinths? Does anybody know a labyrinth? And what you're supposed to do in a labyrinth is you sort of walk in the middle and you follow the trail and it goes round and round and round and goes to the center and then you have to come out the other side and then wiggle your way all the way through. Meantime, you're thinking of an intention. You're thinking about what do I want to do? What is a question that I have? What's a decision I have to make, etc., etc. So as I'm walking through, these are little chickens, you know, the little hens, the hen parties, they start going across my path. And they keep going across my path. So I went, that's it. That's it. Because birds are something that can be very spiritual. They're beautiful, but we can't hold them. We can't touch them. We can't contain them. But we can listen to their sound. We can honor them as they decide to sort of touch the ground, or we let them go, sort of with the wings. All right, it's chickens. If any versions you sort of want to make of that. So as Steve said, I started making, the artist in me started making these different abstract kind of pillows, seeing how much you could put in, seeing how you could take out, how could you make them work on a stick, etc., etc. Because I wanted to animate them so the children could get to tell these stories, and at the same time, it's a pillow, so they actually take it back to the Syrian refugee camps, and they can put their head on it, being tired or whatever. The metaphor of a pillow is so meaningful. Think of what we do with a pillow, how we answer life questions, how we sob into a pillow, how we show joy into a pillow. Intimately, it's our anniversary, you know, just saying. So you could have pillow talk. So it's a familiar thing that people could have, they could own, the children just could sort of be with. And it's something that everybody ends up enjoying kind of along the way. It has the resilience because it's sewn, and it's sewn by somebody else that helps protect you all the way around. It's also paint that stays on permanently. It's not, you know, sort of a watercolor that disappears. This paint stays forever, and it's a memory of a time you had and a sequence that you had that was so important. And it fights off when life gets tough. You have your pillow, like the transitional Winnicott theory of transitional objects, if anybody's psychologically oriented that way. It becomes very important as a container, something you can hold on to. But maybe I didn't get to your question.
No, that was very much with respect to the pillow.
Yes.
And why you got the idea of animals by looking at chickens and why we have 24 really funky ass chickens and hanging all over the house. Talk a little bit about the choose your animal, and now, as we saw it now, a group is going to come together and make them effectively, through art, create a space in which they all live together and what was striking about some of the stories that came, and some of the commonalities.
So what have you found in that bag?
Some monkeys.
Which one?
A monkey.
A monkey, that's a good one, yes. What else was found?
Seahorse.
A seahorse, ooh, nice.
Penguin.
A baby?
Penguin.
Penguin, yes, yes.
Dragon.
Which one?
A dragon.
A dragon.
And a snake.
And a snake, woohoo! Oh, you're getting right with it, I say. So sometimes these little lovely things, I would ask, can you, this is your friendly one. This is the one that you really like spontaneously chose. And it's a bit like magic, isn't it? We all do that sort of funny thing every now and then through tarot cards or through whatever. Who knows what you believe or don't believe. But it's a fortune cookie. It sort of pops out. The second one is you choose which one is your friend. And then I surprise you and say, what is your enemy of this animal? But now, if I asked you to paint on there, what's the environment of that little animal? And what is it? Is it rivers or lakes or trees or fences or whatever it is? Well, now that you got that, I'm going to put you with another person. Then you're going to say, now we've got 4. We've got the enemy, or 6, 4, the enemy and the friend and the spontaneous one. How are they going to live together? Because some is in the sky, some's on the, there's going to be a tiger, and there's a little snake that sort of gets through. So how is that going to work? When I do that again with now 4 of you, or maximum 12 of you, now we're doing a mural. And we're trying to figure out how do they all get along. And in this sense, when the world's conflicts are going on, we're not using empathy and compassion as it goes. We have to find ways of actually developing that with children. Sort of say, I know you don't like that one, but hey, we got to get all along, so what are we going to do? So it starts the discussion of how on earth are you going to live together? What's that going to mean? What's it going to be like? Notice we're not talking about the burns on our faces and arms that are around and everything that's going on. But if a child picks like a leopard, that's pretty cool. Kind of what's happening on their bodies. So you can also tell what they're picking as well, which is the biggest issue that they have to deal with. Now that's only part of the story, but it begins to have the children relate to each other when you were scared before, when you wouldn't even make contact, when you wouldn't even be there. It's easier to make a contact with the dragon or the monkey or whatever, and we can look at that. It's easier to talk about the monkey and the other one than to really talk about what's going on. It's an opening, it's a wedge into the psyche of the child, of the person.
And then, what was the importance of moving beyond just the drawings? And by the way, I've seen her do the exercise with these little animals and whatnot with Fortune 500 executive teams, okay? Because you will probably, inevitably, when adults see her little bag of animals, they end up asking if they can have one. And she may give you one each, but you made the decision, and yeah, okay, they could have then embodied in pillows, but then to do a play, right, a puppet show, and also then the common themes that kept coming out among all the different groups that did their shows.
Well, I'm just going to make a comment about the Fortune 500 companies, because living with this wonderful man, you can imagine we cross over quite a lot in human interactions, cultures of companies, etc., etc. So he sends me the difficult clients, and we try to find a way of saying, well, what if? What are your resources that you're going to call on? Each animal has a character. They've got claws, or they've got teeth, or they've got all sorts of things. And it's a way to disguise, when the chips are down, I like my claws, or I like the strength, or whatever it is. And you get the eye opener into the character of the person when they're the weakest, as well as when they need the fortitude. So suddenly I get to know you in a way that I never knew before, because, we're just doing the business stuff. We're not really caring or whatever. So whether it's universities and how their systems work, whether it's businesses and how they work, etc., you start getting into this whole other world, and it's safe. It's very, very safe. So now we flip back to these children. The stories that they told were some of the ones that they reenacted. That they would have stories of animals that wouldn't get along, and they hated each other, and they weren't going anywhere, and they're going to eat each other up, and they were going to destroy each other, etc. And then, what actually happened in the end of the play, the children went, well, they all went for food, and they tried the food, and they all ate the food, and they felt much better. So it's as simple as coming with the aggression as a response to the horrors of what's happening, and changing them up to, well, maybe if we had food a little bit, we'd feel better about ourselves, etc. So it sounds very, very simplistic, but that is huge from a child who was part of ISIS, who was made to kill everybody, is now saying, well, give me a little food, and maybe I'm feeling better. It sounds so simplistic, but it begins this story of beginning transformation. Maybe we all need food, no matter what. Is that enough?
I'll do one more question and then we'll open it up. So you mentioned basketball wasn't in the program. There was a basketball thing, and you had young boys who were not really engaging with the artistic, testosterone poisoning, so you said to yourself, well, let's let them do that. But something very interesting happened with the girls, and the one girl in particular who was very shut in. So tell that story.
So first of all, the background, in his youth, he loved to play basketball. So just giving a little context, it's around there. So in that part of the world, the boys and the girls are very separate. When the girl turns 9 or 10, she is no longer allowed to wear regular clothes. She has to wear a hijab and the full cover-up dress. When she's 9, 10 years old, she might get her periods. They tend to marry the children very, very, very young. So the girls are supposed to be proper. They're supposed to relate a certain way. So on the basketball court, the guys are like, well, I'm less of a child, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to beat you. So one girl comes up and she says, just a minute, how come you got the boys down here, you got the girls over here? She said, how about when the boys are shooting, if they miss, it comes over to the girls, and we get to throw our pool. And she said, if we lose it, then you get to throw your pool. So you get the idea, they went either end or whatever. So this girl who's in now, full hijab, comes up and she wins the basketball. I think you saw it in there. She's like, yeah! And everybody was overwhelmed because it was a girl who came up with the game, that was sort of there. And on top, she won. So it was actually thrilling for, these 12 children all the way. And then the guys and the girls said, okay, we'll accept each other a little bit more. And we poofed them out. We just literally got rid of all that energy. Okay, now we're back in there and we're painting on these canvases and whatever. And the boys were absolutely amazing. It was absolutely incredible. And meantime, the girls got on with theirs as well. And both the best person who sewed was a young man. And he was the young man who was one of the most violent ones that were there. And who would have ever thought, it's a simple thing like that would make a difference.
Okay. So if you could turn the house lights on so we can see.
Oh, I think they're pretty good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, you're good. So the person will come to you with a mic.
Thank you, Julia, very much. And Stephen, question, which is probably not easily answered. When an Ara goes into a refugee site or a conflict zone, how long does the program exist for?
So, context again, I always say my three most important words are context, context, context. So that's a brilliant question, because how long do you have to make a difference? I mean, in the stage of things. Whenever I go in, and that was in the Philippines with the Red Cross, when it was in Jenin and the Doctors Without Borders, so I always attach, if you will, peripherally to another organization, so that when I leave, they follow up with the children and the families. So it doesn't feel right to just go in and out in a week or 10 days or whatever it is, but the repeated coming back. And this particular program was to train the trainer, so that there were certain activities that you could then encourage them to do the programming again, because these are all social workers, therapists, educators, et cetera, and are always just thrilled to tell me that a month later they did it themselves, using the parameters of what I was talking about. So at first blush, it seems like, again, we're just doing the activities, but in second blush, there's a training first, there's a debriefing afterwards, and then availability on Zoom to sort of follow up stuff. So I think behind your question is, how long can you intervene? And if you scale up, we're talking thousands and thousands of children in an area. You are compelled to scale up. That's the only way you can start making larger impacts. But I would say by being with one child, just one child, and that child grows up feeling empowered that they are going to make a difference in their community, just think of the ripple effect of that one child. But thank you for that question, because I think it's a real one in everyone's mind. You know, how much can you do in a short space of time? And I'm the lucky one. I get to go home to this lovely man.
Double-edged sword.
Is that sort of where you're answering?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for taking this question.
Like that? Oh, I see. How do you get your supplies? Is it through money raised through this organization, number one? And when you say that you leave the training, is it with local people or other types of volunteers that are there for periods of time?
So in terms of the volunteers, when it was in the Philippines, 51 people showed up. That was the janitor, just as much the president of the college and the university, everyone in between. 51 showed up, and we were able to split them up, and one go on the mudslide as after site, and the other one at the water site, if you will. And without them, you can't scale up. In this particular project, it's like we're doing it as a pilot, so that then we can scale up, but then also move around. Probably next year, we'll be in Turkey, and we'll be helping with the children there. We're also going to go to the Ukraine and to Gaza as well. So anywhere else that the organization will move to sort of start intervening as much as possible on that one. I didn't answer your first question though.
Which was, what's the funding support for the supplies you use?
So this one's a bit funny, because as you're going through the customs borders, they want to see what's in your luggage. And it's feathers. You know, sort of, is that a...
She was the funding source for those supplies.
So a big part of it, which really goes and goes. And then everybody who comes does. They always want you as much as possible to bring, because of course there's no immediate access on that. And it can be bringing can you bring candles, 100 candles, because they don't have electricity, they don't have light. So some of the basic sustenance needs are there. While we are there, I make sure that they're provided for. They have meals, which some of them don't even have for a long, long time. And you do what you can in
up, you can't provide all that material.
No.
So does this, I would think it might come from your organization, or, yeah.
So the organization, of course, and like many, many organizations, depend on the philanthropy of people who make donations and things.
Right.
And they get some from the UN, they get some from the World Council, they get some from international supplies, but they also, Arwa went to this conference, it was in Hawaii, I think it was, or whatever. And it was amazing, and she stood up and she said, just think of what a difference one person's life makes. You think it doesn't really, because we're talking thousands, but when you think through a healthy person versus somebody who's traumatized and stays in that isolated area being so angry, it's a big thing to change one or two people's lives, just to remember that.
I am associated, I do a lot of volunteer work with the Partners of World Health out of Portland. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization. And I've been on several medical missions myself, including Uganda. And so I see a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. I've worked myself with birth patients. And yeah, there's so much work that needs to be done. And getting money for these things is not easy. We've just sent a container to Gaza, and we sent 5 or 6 to Ukraine.
Yeah. I just heard in Gaza they sent in avocados and Coca-Cola. So, it's not a political room, so we're not going there. But what my heart speaks to you on, that the work that you're doing, I know makes a difference. It really does. Little or more we can, but we can't turn a blind eye. And I think that's a bit why I'm so honored by Tom and then Rita to realize that it's a bigger message. We can put our heads in the sand, or we could say, hey, they could have been my children. Really? It's existential whether or not it is. So it's a bigger question back to you, is sort of saying, what's your meaning and purpose in life? And how do you impact that with others and yourself? So thank you again for what you do. Yes?
And Tom, can you remind me, this is supposed to end at what time? 8:30. 8:30, okay. We have more time to fill it.
Thank you, Julia and Stephen. I have a question for you, because today, especially in young people, the use of digital media is a big deal, right? And it seems to me, though, that it could be incorporated into the healing process, so that making a video that can be then shared, because you have a scale issue here,
yes,
too.
Yeah.
It's daunting to think of what's going on in the world today and the challenges to reach all the children, but I'm just curious if you're talking about that or thinking about digital media, how it could be used, and if that's was that a grimace or is it a contemplative?
Yes. Well, to start with, Arwa Damon is a CNN correspondent, whatever, so she is extreme there. She produced all the films and sort of made those viral, and she's very active in sort of giving those back to the community, because she's a visual production kind of person that way. I'm not particularly, but I'm more and more seeing the value of it that can really make a difference. You know, a shocking fact in Uganda, they live in huts, they have no running water, they have to walk miles for water, school costs $25 a semester to go to for the girls in particular, and the families do not have enough money for that, right? But they have a cell phone. And not one cell phone, they have tons of cell phones. I mean, I think it's the most shocking thing, because it starts to break apart the community that had their very core values on sort of being there for each other. Now they're competing whether or not they can have a cell phone and the hours and the chips that go in. So on a personal level, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid that it takes away the camaraderie, the the communication, the sort of system that we have. But the children do get together, like town hall meetings and whatever, and you're absolutely right. You know, if it was a film that sort of says, okay, everybody bring out the toys, or
But
whatever.
Kathy's made, but remember the work you did with Steve Koppel to use digital media?
Yes, that's right.
You might,
Yeah.
and that was brought to the hospitals?
Yes, if you look me up, one of the things I did was expressive digital imagery. And that was a way people in hospitals, in hospice, and work situations, whatever, they created images, because everybody has cell phones here in this country, and then they would tweet them. They would edit them, and then they would display it to the larger group back again. So much so that in the hospitals, you know, they have usually your name at the hospital at the back of your bed or whatever. So there's been several hospitals where they put pictures instead. They put 3 pictures. And the doctor comes in, the staff comes in, and they say, what's that cute little teddy bear up there? You know, sort of thing. Or that's a nice dog. Or what's that dog? Is that dog's name is, you know, sort of whatever it is. It starts a much bigger conversation and a sense of humanity when the child or the adult is stuck in hospitals. Think of it in hospice as well. You know, sort of everybody has a life. My God, they have a life. And all there is a number on it, no name that nobody knows. So in that sense, these images are much more powerful than the words say, I was a doctor, I did do this, I whatever. It's like, this is what's important to me. And then it gets shared. So thank you for that. I was very involved in starting that and working that for quite a few years until Google took over and, you know, you can edit wherever you want on your own. So we started that way. Thank you for reminding me for that, because it's a big part of our world. And it's a very important comment to make. Thank you.
I was struck by your comment about transformation and that sort of moment of transformation for these kids. And it feels like art is this safe place to take risks. And it must be so amazing just to see their faces when they release and they're, you know, feeling like they're in a safe place. I'm curious, because you've worked with adults too, have you seen a difference in the time to transformation in children versus corporate idiots like myself?
So again, context, but a wonderful question to ask, because how much time does it take to refocus, have a new narrative, have a new shift in how your attitudes and feelings? I worked with families for several years, and there's a family that the verbal therapist worked with for 6 months. Couldn't get anybody to talk, just wasn't happening or whatever. So she called me in and she says, maybe you could work with them, you know. So then I said, okay, everybody, you're not allowed to talk. All make an image together on one piece of paper. Slowly start doing an image. And the father does an airplane, okay? An airplane going away. The mother starts trying to draw a wing, kind of get the speed. It's like the daughter is very provocative, breasts hanging out and everything else, draws the other side of the wing. Meantime, the son draws a tree, and then he draws big scissors to chop it all down. Meantime, there's a little 10-year-old girl in the corner, and she was the one that was diagnosed. She used to take her nails and just make them bleed, because she would scratch them so much, and she wouldn't stop. Here she is in the corner of the sun. She's putting the rays of the sun, and she's also scratching as she does it. Okay, I got an image. Okay? I do not need to interpret that. I need to reflect that back to the family to sort of say, yeah, okay, tell me about the picture, tell me what's going on or whatever. But a missing component was, did you all realize there was a sun in the corner. Who made the sun? Huh, a little girl with a scratchy voice. So she, in fact, was warming up this whole family system. And that sort of just awareness, that little sort of scratchy mark, the very week when they came back for therapy, she was no longer scratching. I mean, it was that quick because she had felt heard for one of the first times. She felt heard that she had a role in the family system. And wouldn't you know it, the father confessed he was having an affair. So you can imagine what happens then and everything that goes with it. So talk about quick. You know, I was like, so I also went to Gaza about 20 years ago or so, the first intifada. And the whole mental health clinic was at loggerheads with each other. They were so frustrated, they didn't know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. And the psychiatrist with me said, okay, we're going to teach them how to work in cultures and companies and whatever, and we're going to give them the book. And I said, why don't we go to chapter 7? He said, no, we'll start at chapter 7, you know, sort of thing. So he says, what do you mean? Okay, you do it. So, and I come and I said, okay, can everybody please draw the director of the program? And they all went, ooh, what did he do then? So the director of the program was a monster. Was a plane going away, was this empty chair. Do you get my idea? So all I had to do was say, here we are. Have a little reflect back again. We went to chapter 7 so fast. And so much so that we're able to say to the staff, that were about 20 people, what do you want? How would this organization work again? And they sort of said, well, actually, we have a voice. We'd like to say how we might like to interact to do. So it's like, well, what do you want to do? Well, a conference. And they went, you mean we could do a conference? And it's just like, why can't you do a conference? Well, because the directors, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, no, if you all get together and a conference is meaningful that you want to share, do it. Next year, they had a conference. And it was one of the best international conferences I've ever been to because they gave each other voice. So again, I don't know if that answers you because everything is contextual, but I would say the art imagery and being able to work through the metaphors and the symbols can be so fast. And you cannot deny that that little boy wanted to chop down the tree. I didn't do that. It's just like, yes, you did. You chopped down the tree. Sort of, it's, you can't take it back. It's something now you have to work with. And we have to work with what the meaning is for that and how we need to get to next steps. So thank you, Hassan.
So I want to jump on the observation Wanda made where she said music, but the arts are universal, speaking across cultures. And for more than a dozen years, Julia Leslie had an affiliate in Israel, right? And she would go twice a year to kick off the semesters as the dean of the division that had that program. And she always felt that if I went to Israel and did work there, I need to go to the West Bank or Gaza. I just have to. And she did that every time. And one of the times you asked what's the best and most important thing I could do, and they said go to the Jenin refugee camp. Okay? But she needed a guide, someone to help her. And there was a local, I don't know, what was Katam degree at that point? She wasn't. So they gave her Katam, right? And Katam, you were there, let's say 5 days or whatever, and she's working with these women in the Jenin refugee camp. Katam is doing all of the translation, and the net result, which Katam said to me, she said at the end of the 5 days, I looked at this woman who couldn't speak a word, came from a different cultural, economic background, and she had induced changes in these women and communicated with them in a way that I found unbelievable. Katam now has a PhD in art therapy, okay? Came and studied with Julia and has gone back and doing amazing things in East Palestine and the West Bank. What did you do with those women without language?
Well, first, does anyone know Al Miller, who was a theater project in, oh, bless his heart. It's just so sad when he died. He helped fund Kitan to come over, and he helped her to get her undergraduate degree. She crowdsourced for her master's degree, and then we helped her out of it with her master's degree. Yeah. So that was, you know, this one life, and
She's multiplying.
yes.
What did you do with the women?
So the 20 women and 52 men had died in the last explosion that sort of happened. And it was husbands and it was brothers, and you get the idea. And nobody had worked with these women who were extraordinarily bereaved, you know, like as we all would be, right? So the first thing I did, which was is to give them hand cream. It's sort of strange, and they sort of say, I said, and not just hand cream, but put it on the other person's hand cream, you know. And she said, you put hand cream on our food? Yes. And you could choose is it lavender or is it, you know, another color? And because they're all covered up, right? So here they are, and they start giggling, and they sort of say, okay, we're kind of doing this. And then we do some more kind of things around getting to know you. Then we get in the circle, and then we start talking about, well, we want to honor those people who have died, so can you write something about them? And we're all going to put them in the wall, and we're going to honor them in the wall. And one by one, they sort of added to the wall, and then they started to sort of tell their stories of how that person was so important in their lives and what they could do. So you can only imagine what was that like, a father of 10 and a mother of, you get the idea, sort of thing that was there. But meantime, Kitana was sort of saying, oh my God, they're talking, you know, because they had made these messages that they wanted to sort of send out. And the end of 2 days with them, back to time again, I only have 2 days, they were laughing and they were being with each other in a sort of sense of camaraderie. So, it's just a little bit. Thank you.
Julia, you give meaning to the word humanitarian.
Oh.
Steve and Julia, I can't tell you what your willingness to jump in at the last minute means to all of us. I learned so much tonight, not only about what you're doing, but who you are. From Freeport speech and all of us here. Thank you.